video we put on YouTube, we showed it to our board the other day, and I'm like, those are some big ducks.
Yeah.
Everyone's holding turkeys, and we had to explain why.
Actually, two opportunities.
It's funny on the video. They're just talking about this duck hunt, and they're all just turkey hunting the whole
Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty fun.
Classic.
I love
That's
it.
not the point of it.
I mean, the college camp is great, though. I mean, whenever we started it back in 2009 or 10 or whatever with UC Davis and Paul Bonderson, and the whole concept of that thing was getting students from UC Davis that had no background, no experience in hunting, had just no clue on how things are managed. To give, these students are going in to manage, they're going to be in management positions at U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Fish and Game, and you could see the division in these agencies already between hunting and non-hunting, and we wanted to provide them a little perspective. So we created this college camp to invite them up, put them through hunter safety, get them out in the field, give them a hunt, provide them that experience, and it's just been one of the most rewarding programs that I think that we've got going. I mean, you see Paul Bonderson, all the things that he does across the country with different groups and whatnot, and it's the thing that he loves more than anything.
Yeah, like a little kid all weekend. He's just happy, grinning, and So
so he, we've been talking with him and John Eady about it. We want to do more of it, right? But it's hard because you've only got so many weekends, a lot of other things happening on his property, and so we did agree to do 2 next year. And we're going to work with Humboldt State.
Why not?
Right, baby.
Why not Chico State?
Chico is going to come in third.
Chico's third line.
Oh,
so we got
terrible.
UC Davis.
Number 1, of course.
Number 1, I don't know about that. Number 2, we got Cal Poly.
What?
It's Cal Poly Humboldt now.
Oh.
It just changed. This is now California Polytechnic University.
So that's next year we're going to do 2, and then the following year the goal is to do 3, but basically kind of open it up where it doesn't have to necessarily be those 2 schools. They will be heavily involved with help coordinating it, but people will be able to send in their applications, bio of why they want to go to camp, what their background is, et cetera. It's kind of moved, for a lot of graduate students kind of now that are going in and don't have any hunting experience. But and back to the kind of rewarding part of it, what I think is pretty neat is like the first time I did it, there's vegans there and like no one's ever shot a gun.
Yeah,
and
you put me in a blind with a vegan and a Buddhist the first year.
But then it's like,
and it went well.
Yeah. Thankfully.
But you come back and everyone's like, oh my God, you shot a mallard, and I got 4. And it's like everyone's grinning and like you're like, wow, this is really cool. This
Got
is
instant
something.
camaraderie.
Yeah, this is something here, right? And everyone's cleaning their birds, and I mean, like really getting into it. Of John, what's this and that, and taking an hour to pick one bird, and you're like, all right, go a little quicker.
We're like, okay, we've been here for 3 days.
Look at that speculum, looking at the wings and everything. But that's been it's super rewarding. But we are doing more of those. Kind of open it up so people can go onto our website, fill an application out, and then the universities would be spreading the word as well. So that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and spreading the word, that's the key part of that third camp, college camp, that we hope to integrate into the program is that cross-pollination across universities and colleges. Because it really takes somebody at the college to help coordinate and lead that effort with their students. So if we can get more colleges and universities with individuals there that have that see value in this and have a passion for it, then hopefully we can scale it up and we can do more of it in other places.
Why not?
Yeah. So I mean, thankfully, Paul Bonderson and Birdhaven Ranch are going to allow us to do 3 of these, but it is a resource-intensive thing for a relatively small number of students.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
And as much as we'd like to do these things all over the place, there's not very many places where you can do that effectively without really interrupting, a landowner, duck club's property, which. So the cross-pollination will create the interest and the demand for it, and then we're going to have to look for other places where we can host these things. And that kind of leads me to think about our strategic planning process and our regional conservation education centers and how we can use our own properties to scale up these types of things where we're not putting the burden on other duck clubs.
Yeah.
So our Butte Sink properties is an opportunity for us where we can develop those facilities in an area that we can provide a similar experience that's very impactful for these students.
Yep.
Beautiful landscape, lots of birds, lots of things for them to see. We could do the duck hunts, the turkey hunts, maybe even deer hunts. So I'm opportunistic that we can develop a vision around that particular property, and in the next 5 years or so, build that facility out so that we have an education center where we can host more of these types of college camps. So,
Yeah, I think my most favorite thing I do in the hunt program is duck camps, and my least favorite thing about duck camp is I can't do more of them.
Yeah.
And you have these things that just you can see the impact it's making on the people that are there.
Yeah.
And you want to have that impact on everybody else. And you're right, we don't have the facilities everywhere to be able to do all these things. And when we're not running a duck camp or a college camp, those properties are getting used anyway. So we have to have that balance of getting the public out to use our properties as well as using those areas to educate new hunters. I mean, there's a fine balance to it.
Absolutely.
well, so the impact on a relatively small number of people, right? So what's the value of that? What good is it?
Where's your measurement?
What good is it for CWA for me to take a vegan and a Buddhist out in a duck blind for one weekend and have them, see my dog bring a sprig back with its neck limp and girl turn green. I think she's going to vomit and thought we were going to end the program right there in the first year, right? What's the value in that?
Yeah.
Well, after that weekend, these students that are going to go into these management positions, while there's only 15 of them in most of our camps, that experience, which has thankfully been positive in 100% of the cases.
Yeah.
The evaluation and the story that they provide at the end
before and after is telling.
Yeah,
Right?
it's been 100% positive. So that positive takeaway from that camp, these students then take that back to school. They take it back to their friends. They take it back to, that's part of them from here on out. So as they move up through wherever they go, whether it's a consulting firm or working for an endangered species department at Fish and Game, they take that experience, that positive experience, and associate it with hunters and the conservation work that we do. So it's an exponential type impact that, you can't measure and say, you only took out 15 people, right?
Yeah.
You put that in an annual report. It's like, oh, great. You spent all that time and money
for 15 folks.
kids.
Yeah.
It's that I don't know if it's intangible, but it's
It's the stuff you can't see on the back end.
Oh, yeah,
that
it's
one
hard to
person
measure.
could have affected 200 people, but that originally came down to you sitting in the duck blind.
Personally, I think it's the best thing that we do as an organization. College camps.
Well, you have a guy that wasn't awarded as a game warden, right?
Yeah, that was a pretty cool story. So this last year, I gave CWA's Wildlife Officer of the Year award to our recipient in Monterey at their big award ceremony. And hadn't met him before. His name is Austin. And I gave him the award, and we took a picture, and he's like, hey, I got something to tell you. I was like, hey, what? He's like, I was a UC Davis college student, and the first time I ever went hunting was at you guys' UC Davis college camp. I think it was the first one you guys ever did. I was like, no kidding. He's like, yeah. So I hunted with this guy named Jake, and and he's like, I shot. This first time I went hunting, I shot a limit of wood ducks. I was like, "There's no way!" And so we started talking. After that, he became an avid hunter. Wanted to become a warden, wildlife officer, and that's literally what he does now. He's a fantastic wildlife officer. He was highly decorated. He's only been like an officer for less than 10 years, and he's highly decorated. And it was really cool to see that. And then I tell Jake, and he's like, I remember that guy. He shot 7 wood ducks.
But his path
I think it was
changed,
7
right?
Drake wood ducks too.
It was very impressive.
A corn hunt, it was silly.
So you see what it had impact on him. It affected his career, affected his life, what he wants to do as a hobby now for the rest of his life is hunt. It's just pretty cool to see.
Yeah, and when we talk about scale, we're talking about we usually have 15 students there, so we need a fairly big property because everyone's in their own blind. We need sleeping arrangements for all those folks, plus 15 other guides. So over the whole entire weekend, we have 35 to 40 people there helping out Friday through Sunday. When we talk about scale and facilities, it's really hard to find those partnerships that can accommodate that group of folks. But basically within a weekend of college camp, they're coming in, getting hunter safety, shooting a gun for the first time, going out in the field, looking at what habitat is, looking at seeds, bugs in the water, duck calling, waterfowl ID, all that good stuff, and then going out on a duck hunt. And the goal is to get them kind of talking with some of the people that have been in the industry for a long time, making those connections as well to hopefully help their careers too.
Yeah, so. You mentioned shooting a gun for the first time, right?
Yeah.
So we talk about hunting and conservation and everything else. When we talk about protecting our interests as waterfowl hunters and changing views on gun ownership and everything else, I mean, California's got all kinds of crazy stuff. And I know that there's another ballot initiative that's being proposed that could be hugely problematic for us. But so you get, a young college person that's holding a gun for the first time at our camp, shaking, literally in tears.
Yeah, there's like
first time that they've ever held a weapon. Talk about an impact.
Yep.
And comfort them, calm them down, teach them, and then they fire that weapon for the first time, and it's almost like a relief. They understand it, they respect it, and
it's not as scary.
It's hugely impactful. I mean, we try to scare people away when we talk about hunter education and that whole process.
Yep.
There's obviously some bad things that happen with firearms and guns and hunting and everyone's got stories about that and that's part of that education process and sharing it. I know Kevin's got a doozy that he incorporates into some of his hunter education classes.
Yeah, I mean, it's why I became a hunter ed instructor. So some folks have heard this story. I've never told it on a podcast before, but in December of 2017, I was actually involved in a hunting accident that nearly took my life. So I was in Elko, Nevada, actually there for work for a different organization that I worked for a weekend. And when I go there, I have an uncle that lives there, and we usually go and hang out and do something fun. And this time we were going to go out. Well, actually, we were planning to go out and hunt the Ruby Marshes, but it was December, and it froze over. So that wasn't a very good opportunity at that point. So we decided to change things up. We're going to go coyote hunting. It's like, all right, that sounds good. Especially, coyote hunting out here, they're kind of mangy looking. They're not great. You get over to Elko, they got a great freaking coat on them. So I was like, all right, I would love to tube out a nice coyote pelt. So we go out, first spot, my uncle and a buddy of his, and it's cold. It's like 0 degrees that morning. And we get on this stand not too far to Elko next to South Fork Reservoir and get the e-collar going. 15, 20-minute stand, nothing comes in. I'm like, all right, well, we'll go pick up another buddy. He's got some good access. Go pick up him, go to this different access, drive on the property, and it's like beautiful coyote country, like rolling open hills, few junipers here and there. It's exactly what you're looking for a coyote. It's like, all right. So we get set up, and as we're looking at the setup, we've got this slope of this hill in front of us and this valley in front of us to the north. To the east. And to my right is the south, and there's a little hump that you can't quite see over. So like, all right, well, I'm going to go set up over here underneath this juniper on top of this little hump so I can see to the south if we got something coming in. So they all set up right there next to the e-collar, and I kind of get up over there and sit up underneath this juniper. And they click it on, starts calling, and after about 5 minutes, I look to my right, to the south, where I was trying to see, and there's a coyote coming through the brush. I was like, oh. So I get ready to get my gun on it. And it stops. It sees the movement, stops, pull the trigger, and click. It was so cold that morning that I actually froze my firing pin in my gun. So I was like, oh, no. So I jack the shell out. Coyote runs about 20 yards. Get back on it again, pull the trigger, boom, smoke it. Goes down. It's like, all right, cool. And in the distance, I can hear a couple coyotes calling. It's like, okay, so we got some more dogs coming in. I'm just going to hang out and see what happens. So as I'm sitting there, a couple minutes goes by, and in the valley out in front of us, I can see 2 coyotes running through. And it's like, okay, the way they're going, it's too far for me right at that time. They're running quick. They're going to come past my position, and they're eventually going to come around me. And I was like, okay, the boys are going to get shot at these coyotes. This is going to be sweet. So I'm just sitting there, and I lose them in the slope of the hill. I can't quite see them. And then I finally see one. It was coming up the hill, and it's kind of split off. One was coming around them on this side, and one was coming up kind of in between us. So I'm watching that one, and I'm thinking, like, okay, they may not be able to see it. As it's coming up, I've got them here. I've got the pickup somewhere back in here. Once it gets fully behind me, I'm gonna have a shot at this. So I'm sitting down underneath that juniper, and I've got my gun, and I'm slowly turning. And as I'm doing that, I just feel an impact hit my left arm. And instantly, my ears are ringing, my vision's blurry, and it just felt like dead weight hanging off the left side of my body. So I was like, shit, I just got shot. And that realization kind of went through my head. And I yell, stop shooting. You just shot me, with some expletives thrown in there. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I got to get to the truck before I pass out. So I grab my gun, my shooting sticks in my right hand. I'm walking back over.
At this point, how aware are you of how bad the injury is?
Not aware, because I didn't want to know at that point.
Gotcha.
I just gotten somewhere on my left arm. I knew I'd gotten shot. I needed to get to the truck before I went down.
How many yards away are you from your group as you're walking back towards them, or are you walking towards the truck?
I'm walking back towards them and the truck. The way to get to the truck was to get to them and then walk towards the truck. So it was 90 yards. So it was a little bit further.
Yeah.
Than
And I'm going to add
typically
something. If you
would
guys
I.
missed the first part of our podcast, this is the second part. The person talking right now is Kevin Vela. He is CWA's regional biologist and lands manager, and this is his story about his coyote hunt. The gentleman next to him is CWA's COO, and he was talking earlier about our college camp. So Jake Meserly is the COO, and we've got Kevin Vela next to us, and Jeff Smith is next to me. So after you got shot, you're walking back.
Yeah, so I'm walking back, and I meet my uncle. He grabs my gun, shooting sticks. One of the guys is already on the phone with 911. Luckily, we had cell phone service there. And I just start piling towards the truck. I open up the back of the truck and just kind of sit sideways, get in there so my arm's not touching anything. And the other guys hop in the truck, and we're about 45 minutes outside of Elko. And there's snow on the ground. It's not a great situation. So we're slipping and sliding, trying to get out of there. I can hear the gentleman on the phone with the 911 operator, and the 911 operator is asking, how bad is it? How bad is he shot? And I was not
Bad
recommended. Not recommended, but I was
Were you shot with a shotgun or a rifle?
I was shot with a .223.
Okay.
And so I was so pissed off at that point, and kind of a little bit fired up. I didn't want anybody to touch my arm. I just wanted to go.
Did you think it went into your body at all, or do you?
I didn't know.
You're just like, I know my left side's done.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I've got on a base layer, a down jacket, a wool jacket. It was cold that morning, so I've got a lot of stuff that can soak up blood. So I don't know how bad I'm hit. I don't see blood coming out.
Okay.
So anyways, we're in the truck. We're hauling ass, trying to get back to Elko, and all of a sudden, everything outside of the truck starts to go white.
Oh, jeez.
And then everything inside of the truck starts to go white. And I think I'm dying. I don't know what's going on. I'm losing my vision. And so at that point, I looked at my uncle and I told him, tell Kelsey I love her, because I thought I was dying. And at that moment, Kelsey's my wife, and at that moment, I actually had some time to think about my life, thought about the life I've lived and who I was, and I was pretty good with it. It was a pretty wild experience. And in my mind, I kind of started to snap back into it and go, no, you're not dying. You're just going into shock. Breathe. So I started to breathe, took some deep breaths, and then I could start to see inside the truck again. And then breathe a little more. I could start to see outside the truck. Like, okay, you're going to be okay. You're going to live. So we meet the ambulance about halfway between Elko and where we were. I get out of the truck and meet the EMTs, and they have me sit down in the dirt next to the truck. Still don't know why. Again,
Hang out here for a second.
Again, it's 0
Just sit in
degrees.
the dirt.
And the EMT asked me, do you want me to take your jacket off or do you want me to cut it off? I said, effing cut it off. I'm not moving my arm. So he starts cutting up. And like I said, there's feathers flying, and as he's cutting up and looking at my arm, and I don't see, he's getting up to my forearm and I don't see any blood yet. Like, okay. Gets close to my elbow, start seeing some
You're
blood.
just sitting there watching him cut it.
So I start seeing more blood, and he cuts up to my shoulder. And he goes, okay, I found where the bullet entry is. There's no exit wound. The bullet's still inside of you.
Oh, wow.
So being hunters like we all are and seeing exit wounds, I thought that was a good thing. I mean, you see what an exit wound looks like.
Yeah.
It's a lot worse off than the entry wound.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And we get in the ambulance and start heading towards Elko. And I asked the EMT, I said, do you think they're going to have to amputate my arm? And he's like, I have no idea, man. You're going to have to get in there. So we get into the hospital in Elko. They x-ray me and they go, your arm's in too many pieces for us to deal with. We can either send you to Salt Lake City or we can send you to Reno. And I was like, well, Reno's a lot closer to home.
Yeah.
So at that point, got on the phone, had my uncle get on the phone with my wife, my parents, let them know kind of what had happened, and then took a nice little $40,000 flight from Elko to Reno.
They take cash?
Yeah. credit. So I ended up doing that, and they put me on some pretty heavy drugs at that point. And talking with the flight nurses, they're like, okay, so just so you're aware, when you get to the hospital, it's going to be pretty intense. There's going to be a full trauma team there. There's going to be a lot of people. It can just be a little bit overwhelming. It's like, okay.
How long is the flight? Like, how long did it take you to get there?
You want to do a cost per minute? Or
is it like a 50-minute flight? I mean, how long are you on?
No, it was pretty quick.
Okay.
I mean, just driving from Elko to Reno is about 4 hours. So
Yeah.
it was like probably 30, 45 minutes.
Okay.
It was pretty quick. And it was in a little jet.
And you're conscious the whole time?
Yeah, conscious the whole time. I mean, partially conscious.
Yeah.
I was floating
Yeah.
in more ways than one. And so they pushed me in on the gurney, and there's like 20 people sitting there. There's people taking my boots off, picking all these clothes off, asking me questions, do you know what caliber it was? Do you know what grain the bullet was? And it was really cool because some of the surgeons that I had there at Renown in Reno were hunters and shooters. So they knew exactly what I was talking about. So anyways, they slide me through the MRI and then put me over in ICU. And they come over and talk to me, and one of the surgeons, one of the orthopedic surgeons, is like, extremely unlucky you got shot, but also very lucky. The bullet hit you. So it was a 40 grain frangible bullet coming out of 223 at like 3,900 feet per second. And when it hit my arm, it, clouded. It essentially broke up into a million different pieces, like a frangible hollow point type of bullet does. Yeah. And it hit my arm and shattered my arm into lots of different pieces. So luckily, it hit the bone. If it would have missed the bone, right left the bone, it went straight into my heart and lungs. If it would have went an inch higher, it would have went into my shoulder. I probably would have never been able to use my left arm again. But what it did was it hit the bone, shattered. A fragment hit my artery and didn't break it. It caused what's called a pseudoaneurysm, where it weakens the wall of the artery, it ballooned it out, and it didn't break.
Wow.
If it would have broke, I'd have died right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, he told me I was very lucky that all happened. And again, keep in mind the situation. I mean, this was a moving coyote. The guy that shot me was, trying to shoot at this moving coyote.
Yeah.
He was, one of the hunters in my group. I was moving at that time, moving to my left. So, I mean, all those things combined for it to hit right there and to cause the least amount of, potential long-term damage is pretty crazy. So I spent 5 days in the hospital, got a nice big titanium plate that got put in there. They got all the bone fragment out, the little pieces, but they left all the bullet fragment in, the lead, because they said it was more invasive to pull it out than to leave it in. My body will just kind of naturally work it out over that course of that time. But spent 5 days in the hospital, took, I think, 5 pints of blood during that time after my surgery, and got out, I think it was, so that was December 9th, 2017. I was back in a duck blind and shot a gadwall one-handed in January like 15th. So, I mean, it's pretty crazy to have that shattered. Fantastic surgeons there at Renown. And as I was sitting there in the hospital thinking about this, in my mind, I was trying to figure out how I can turn this into a positive. I mean, this was a life-changing event. It probably affected my wife and my family more than me, because it was pretty significant for them to see that happen to me.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, I was trying to make sure, okay, how do I turn this into a positive? And that's when I knew, I said, okay, I've always thought about being a hunter instructor. but I'm going to be a hunter instructor, and I'm going to tell the story to people so that they can understand the responsibility that they have. And if I can save one person from getting shot, from potentially, killing someone, then it's all worth it. It's worth it that it happened to me and that I survived through it. So I came back, I became a hunter instructor, and I've been fortunate to tell that story to a lot of different kids and adults throughout their hunter education journey. And it's a story that is impactful, but you also got to be careful with it, right? Because you don't want to scare people away from hunting. So you kind of got to make sure that you tell it the right way and make sure that people just understand that it's a responsibility. These things can happen, but if you're responsible, they won't happen. So yeah, that was kind of the story and how I became a hunter instructor. And I've been fortunate enough, like I said, to be able to tell that to a lot of different people. I've told it at a bunch of CWA sponsored events. And I don't know, I've thought about it. If I could go back and have it not happen, I don't know if I would. I don't want to go through it again.
Yeah.
But it gave me a better perspective on life, to live every day more positively. And like I said, I think that telling that story will be able to help people and hopefully help someone not go through what I did.
Yeah, man, that's a crazy story, and you're here.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
Did the bullet ricochet off something and then hit you, or is it a straight shot, like a miss from the moving target, and you were just in the line of?
Yeah, so I mean, in my mind, it was really weird. In my mind, it was all kind of slow motion, and I thought that it actually went through the coyote. It did not. In my mind, even when they went back and investigated the scene, there was no dead coyote there. He shot over the top of it, and it was just a pure miss, and it was just right in line with where I was at.
Wow.
So, I mean, the story to be told and the lesson to be learned there is, one of the key components, one of the 10 commandments of gun safety is know your target and what's beyond, right?
Yeah. And
so that individual had, forgotten where I was at. In the heat of the moment, things happening fast.
They do.
And I have no blame for the guy. I feel actually worse for him because he probably went through a lot knowing what happened,
Is this a friend of yours or a friend of the uncle's?
It was a friend of my uncle's. Yeah,
Okay.
I hadn't met him till that day.
Okay.
Does he still hunt?
I think so. I hope so. Yeah, I hope that it didn't deter him from hunting.
Yeah.
Because I mean it's something that we're all passionate about, and like I said, it's a mistake that can be made because things are happening fast. You've got rifles and you've got big game animals, and like it's a non-game species, but something coming in fast.
Yeah.
And even since that day, like I get a little bit worked up when we have something like that where you've got rifles and something's coming in fast, or you're calling something in. It gets a little bit eerie for me.
Do you tend now to limit who you hunt with in terms of who it is? I know you got some close groups of friends that you hunt with. Do you go outside of that group anymore?
Yeah, I still do. I still help coordinate hunts for CWA and hunt with new people. Work with the college camps with new folks.
Yeah.
So I still do. I definitely am more conscious of the safety decisions and have that safety talk.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not someone who's going to let something slide.
Yeah.
If someone's barrel is pointing somewhere it's not supposed to, I'm going to let you know.
Right.
Which I think is good, right? And you can't be like, oh, they're I'm embarrassed, or you don't want to make sure.
Got to speak up.
You got to speak up. You have to say it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember hearing about it from I think Orlando or Robert when it happened. Basically, just everyone got was Kevin was shot, helicopter, Reno. That was like it. And then it was like a couple days later, we're like, what's going on, dude? And finally, but it's kind of scary. It kind of wakes you up. Just like as a hunter, like it can happen quickly.
In an
Oh, yeah.
instant, yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know about you guys, but I know a lot of people who have had those instances where guns gone off for because something wasn't right. You weren't, all your safety precautions weren't there. The gun went off, but it's usually just pointing in a safe direction, and nothing's happened.
Yeah.
I think this is a good wake up call for people to see. Oh, it can't happen to someone close to me.
Yeah.
I got a good education as a kid. I remember sitting on the ground. My dad's going to hate me for this. I would hang out on the carpet in our house, and I remember I could look up through my dad's foot as my mom was cleaning it with iodine and gauze.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, he used to work at when he was younger, he worked at a rod and gun club, and they were shooting skeet all the time. And it was common practice for those guys to unload their gun, put the barrel on their foot, and then rest on the butt of their gun. Well, he got into that habit, and then they went up pigeon hunting, Chews Ridge, and did the same thing. Some pigeons or something came by, reached down to pick up his gun, 12 gauge right through the top of his foot.
Boom.
Wow.
Clean hole. I mean, just like all the way through.
Yeah.
So he got I don't know if it was a $40,000 helicopter flight, but he got one. And now, I mean, he was lucky. He's got all of his toes and can still walk.
Yeah.
But,
How old is he?
he's got I don't know. He's probably in his, had to be in his late 20s, early 30s.
Okay.
I don't know. But yeah, now it looks like he's got a shotgun crimp. Perfect shotgun crimp right on the top of his foot.
It all sucked up into a crimp.
Yeah, it's just like a 12 grade. Like if you could picture that on the top of his foot. But yeah, safety's huge, and all of our programs, we preach it, we teach it, but stuff happens.
Yeah.
And I know some of the other podcasts, the guides were talking, Casey and Jason were talking about the things that they experience, and it can happen in an instant, and stuff just goes sideways, and you got to be ultra careful. And in my experience, it's the older guys that just get too comfortable.
Doing it forever.
And man, I remember my late grandfather, I wanted to take him hunting in his mid-80s, and I just couldn't do it anymore because he just took that shotgun and slap it on his lap and just swing it around. And and I just started feeling bad because, like you said, I was the bad guy. I was like, dude, I can't have you pointing the gun at me or anybody else. And then he'd get all flustered and, I'm experienced this, that, and the other. Like, sorry, I don't like looking down the barrel of a 12 gauge.
Yeah. Not pleasant.
It's unloaded. I don't care what it is.
doesn't.
It doesn't matter.
Most dangerous gun in the world is one that's unloaded, right?
Yeah.
Jeez.
So at the time of your accident, were you working for CWA? Or were you
No.
working for NWTF?
Yeah, so I first started working for CWA in 2012. I came on as a assistant project manager in the Sassoon Marsh, working for Robert, essentially doing wetland habitat restoration projects in Sassoon, which was awesome. Growing up as a duck hunter, as a hunter, very traditional hunting family. I've got pictures in a book that's actually on Jake's desk of my great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather with bags of birds off the San Joaquin River in 1921 near Modesto.
Oh, wow.
That's cool.
Plug for Yancey Forest Knolls. What's the title of that?
I can't remember the title.
They came to shoot.
They came
to shoot.
No,
Is it a
that's
different
Oh man, we're gonna get in trouble for this.
Yeah, we are.
Sorry,
Anyway,
Yancey.
yeah, check out Yancey's book.
Yeah,
the other one.
It's
The
something
other
about
one.
the Pacific Flyway, but it's pretty cool. So I mean, grew up very much into hunting. It was everything to me. I remember my first boat ride in the dark when I was 11 in the Butte Sink, getting to hunt this fantastic duck club, and from then on I was like, this is what I'm going to do. So in 2012 when I came to work for CWA, it was a dream come true, right? Getting to work on duck clubs, on state wildlife areas, putting waterfowl habitat onto the ground, it was awesome. Worked for about 2 years, and then got an opportunity with National Wild Turkey Federation to become a district biologist for them, and hemmed and hawed about it for a little while, and decided to take him up on it. Sorry, Jake. And
Hey, you're here today, brother.
so I ended up with that job for just about 8 years, which was awesome. Love that job, love that organization. And in 2021, December 2021, had an opportunity to come back. Jake and I talked, and he said there was a potential for this conservation easement program in our land trust, and wanted to see that program grow and have someone take over the helm of it and do that with it. And so I jumped at the opportunity and came back to CWA in December of 21, and it's nice to be back with family, man. It's been a fun ride. Love the time I spent at NWTF and great organization, but there's something about being back home with CWA.
Yeah,
So,
no more leaving. You're stuck. You're stuck now.
I'm stuck now.
Leave once, but that's it.
Man, we got a good group of guys.
Yeah, great team. From the wetland side, obviously hunt program, waterfowl, education, even just, freaking warehouse staff, everybody. We've got a great team here. All the administrative folks.
Yeah, guys and gals across the board. It just everyone that you work with here just seems like everyone's in it, and it just makes it fun because everyone has that passion for their organization, which helps.
Yeah.
So I got a question, Kevin. My father-in-law was telling me about not my father-in-law. Who was it? Anyway, someone was telling me about this podcast that they were listening to the other day, where the host fixes problems. And one of the stories that he told me was about this guy that got hit by he was riding a bike and he got hit by a car. And similar to what you said, it changed his life. But in his view, it changed it for the better, right? And so he healed from that incident. But the guy that actually was driving the car had not. It had changed his life for the worst. So the fixer, the host of this podcast, connected the two of them. And they had this really awkward, challenge conversation to try to work through the things. Yeah. And, your story, I asked if the guy still hunted, and you said, I don't know. And I was thinking, well, it doesn't sound like you're having beers with the guy. So it made me wonder, if you had spoken with this individual and how that person's doing, and if that's something that you're curious about, or where that relationship is at.
No, it's a great question. So he reached out when I was in the hospital kind of early on. It was just, there's a lot going on. Wasn't the right time. Since then, we haven't connected. I've talked to some people that know him, that know he went through, a hard time with it, and, asked if I would be open to meeting him and talking with him about it. Absolutely. It just hasn't happened. We haven't had the opportunity to do it. Neither of us have really sought it out, I guess. But I would definitely be happy to do it and talk through it because, I have no hard feelings with the individual at all. And I hope it didn't affect his life poorly. I'm sure it messed him up for a little while, as it would me. I know I would be really messed up. But no, I would definitely be open to it and would love to do it.
Was there ever a thought in your mind of hanging it up?
No, it's funny. I was laying in the hospital bed watching YouTube hunting videos on my iPad. It was just when Born and Raised was coming out with their Land of the Free elk hunts, and I was like, I gotta catch up on my elk hunts here. So no, there's nothing that could. I don't think there's anything that could change me from that. It's something like I talked about that is so ingrained into my DNA from my heritage and my upbringing and just how we've lived and everything that I don't think I could ever mess with that.
I think it helps that your wife's also really into the outdoors too.
Yeah.
Some people their wives would be like, you're not doing that. And maybe they'd be like, yeah, okay, but yeah.
I'm sure even with her being in the outdoors, I'm sure there was still a concern of going back out, but I don't think it was. I think she knew that it was something that
it's part of you.
Yeah, it was just my identity. Yeah, for sure. But that's a great question. And I have had a lot of people ask, like, oh, did you ever think about hanging it up after getting shot? Like, no, not really.
Nope.
Well, I'm super thankful that you're okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
That's intense.
Yeah.
Big time.
It's crazy to think about kind of the trajectory of my life and where I was. So now my wife and I have two boys. We've got a 4-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. They're both wild and crazy.
Getting a lot of sleep at night.
Yeah, none. Yeah. But there's benefits to that. But it's just to think about how my life could have changed or me not being here and those two individuals not even being on this earth. It's just it's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Do you think that passion and that experience really seeps through when you're educating the college kids that are going to go out and enforce a lot of the laws in California?
I hope so. I got a chance this last year because of the heavy rain year that we had. Unfortunately, we weren't able to have the duck hunt as a part of the college camp. We had to transition it into a turkey hunt in the springtime at Paul Bonderson's place there at Birdhaven Ranch. And I got the opportunity to kind of give a turkey talk with my past history with turkeys, which was a lot of fun.
And informative.
And for,
I turned Carson after you're done. We're like, did you know any of this? I was like, I had no idea.
yeah. It was what was really cool about that with John Eady. You know, he was a game bird professor at UC Davis. Was like, I didn't know that.
He told you, he's like, can you come give that talk to my class?
So it was pretty cool. That was nice to hear. But no, I think it does. You know, and just having that passion and experience with it, I think translates into these folks, and they can see that, and then they learn that the hunter is not just, you know, maybe someone that they thought they were, that they're these passionate individuals that care about conservation. They have that common goal, and then hopefully they take that forward. And you know, like Jake said, when they're working for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and they got to go work on a duck club, even if they don't carry on that hunting experience or that hunting tradition, they go, hey, I did this one time. I know what these places are all about. You know, this is pretty cool out here. So
yeah.
I think that, you know, my passion, our passion for these types of things translates when we're talking about it. And I think it really makes an impact on these folks in the future for hunters as well as for the resource.
Yeah, I think you go to that passion's contagious, right? So we do have all those people that are helping out throughout that weekend that are extremely passionate about, you know, the resource and hunting and teaching people. And the students are like, man, you guys really opened my eyes. But it's because of your passion. It's not, you know, boring. We're kind of putting our heart and soul in it, and that's contagious. And by the end of the weekend, they're like, one, everyone here is awesome, and they're all hunters, and my misconception of hunters is basically blown away. It's not, you know, there's normal people like everyone else.
Well, and they see the investment, right? The investment from Paul Bonderson in that property and how much work it is to make it into this paradise, right? And if you didn't have that passion for waterfowl hunting, it wouldn't be done.
Yeah.
You know, we talked a little bit about the Sassoon Marsh earlier. The only reason that's not developed, I mean, it's right next, it's in the footprint essentially of the Bay Area. Yeah. You know, one of the most urbanized places in the frickin' U.S. The only reason it's not developed and turned into houses is because of duck hunters.
Yep.
You know, they maintained that conservation footprint out there for the birds, for the fish, for everything, because of their desire and their passion to duck hunt. So it's pretty incredible what that's done.
No, I wholeheartedly agree.
I think that's great. One thing, if you could do an outro, I know we got you doing it, but I do want to have him do it as well. An outro.
Oh, okay.
So thank you guys for coming on today.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
You want me to look in the camera like I've been, or can we just
No,
say
just
No,
stare
you're
into the
just
camera.
Oh, I hate
deep
that.
into
You're
the
like-
camera.
No. Just sit down.
Maybe give it a wing. You know?
Ladies' night?
Oh, goodness.
I think we need to carry this conversation into the actual duck blind.
Hey, the 13th. Come
Yeah.
on out.
Yeah.
Brad's going to shoot his first duck on the 13th.
All right.
Don't send invites.
Don't tell me we're the good time. But now, Jake, Kevin, it was awesome talking to you guys, and thanks for spending the time with us here and Save It for the Blind podcast. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Of course, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Save It for the Blind podcast. You can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.